This is Algebra 1, Lesson 4. Algebra 1, Lesson 4. Our objective for this lesson is in what order do I execute operations when simplifying expressions? In what order do I execute operations when simplifying expressions? And it's something you've probably heard of or have seen before a little bit. The acronym that we used to use most of the time, a lot of us still do use, is this acronym PEMDAS, or maybe some people remember it, Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. The P stood for parentheses, the E stood for exponents, the M stood for multiplication, the D stood for division, the A stood for addition, the S stood for subtraction. And if you have learned this, this is very good. It's a great way to remember it. If you've already memorized it, continue on remembering that. Okay, this is very good. The book summarizes it just a slight bit different. Not that this is wrong, not that PEMDAS is wrong. The book just summarizes a little bit different and kind of explains things a little more in detail. So the book breaks it down into 4 steps. The first one is work inside grouping symbols. This is what we used to call P, that parentheses over here, which is absolutely correct because grouping symbols, one kind of them is parentheses, but it kind of adds a little bit more to that because grouping symbols might also look like, okay, so these are some grouping symbols, right? Like 4 plus 7, that'd be an example of a grouping symbol. Another type of grouping symbol that a lot of times people miss is this division bar. If you have 4 plus 6 divided by 2, this is actually grouping the top of it together, saying add 4 plus 6 before you divide by 2. So that is also a grouping symbol. And then of course sometimes we have other kinds of grouping symbols like braces or brackets as well, that we don't necessarily call parentheses. They are a kind of parentheses, but they might be a little bit confusing if you're just thinking of parentheses. So if you learn this method over here with PEMDAS, great. Just make sure you remember what parentheses means. Actually means grouping symbols. The next one here is simplify powers and roots. This is what before we just used the E for exponents, and exponents is another name for powers. And later you'll learn that roots can also be written as powers, but it just kind of looks different. So powers might be something that looks like 3 to the 4th power, kind of like we're talking about in the last lesson. A root might be the square root of 4. This is also a kind of power exponent. So just remember that. So exponents, and also just add a little bit to that in your definition. The next one would be multiplication and division. It groups those together. And then it just simply says do those from left to right. So if we had 3 times 5 plus 6 divided by 2, it says you do this one before you do that one. There you go. So it just says, kind of adds that from left to right. So again, this is what they used for both the M and the D is combined there in step 3. And then likewise for step 4, notice it says add and subtract. So that's going to be your addition and subtraction, your A and your S. And again, it adds that left to right in there, just as a way to kind of give you, because you're like, oh, I have 2 different addition signs. Which one do I do first? Well, do the one on the left before you do the one on the right. Will keep everything working well. So that's order of operations. So let's just see if we can practice a few of those, and I'll turn you loose on your homework. This is just like example 1 in your book, so you could read through example 1. It'd be slightly different than this, but similar in method. So we're going to go through that. First thing we're going to do is the step 1, the grouping symbols. I see a couple different grouping symbols. Here's one, and here's a second one. So I'm just going to start on the left 4 times 5 is going to give me 20. I haven't used this plus 3 yet, so I'm just going to write it. Times 6 plus 2 is 8. Okay, now I still see two different operations, so I'm not finished yet. There's a plus sign and a minus and a multiplication sign, plus and multiplication, or addition and multiplication more properly said. So then I'm going to do this multiplication because that's going to come up in step 3 versus in step 4. Notice I got to skip over step 2 because there's no exponents. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is this 3 times 8. 3 times 8 is 24. And then this is that 20. So now I have 20 plus 24, which is going to give me 44, and that is going to be my final answer. These next ones are again like example 2 in your book. They're not example 2, but they're similar to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look through. I'm doing this part A. I'm going to look through and see if there's any grouping symbols, where I do see some over here on the far right, so I want to simplify everything inside. Inside those grouping symbols is simply a 2, so it's already simplified. So I'm going to move on to step 2. The next step 2 is exponents and roots. So then 2 cubed is going to be 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. And over here, I have a 5 squared, which means 5 times 5, 25. I'm just going to bring everything else down. Plus 8 divided by 2 minus 3. Multiplied by that 8. So I've finished group step 1 and step 2. Step 3 is multiplication and division from left to right. So as I look over here, this is an addition sign. I'm looking for multiplication or division. Oh, here's a division sign, so I'm going to do that. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then as I keep looking down, subtraction, nope. Here's a multiplication. So 3 times 8 is 24. So these two became the 4. These two became the 24. So I just need to keep that subtraction sign there. On the left, I still have this 25 plus. So now I just need to do addition and subtraction from left to right. Here's a plus, here's a minus. So let's see, add those together. 25 plus 4 is going to give me 29 minus 24. And then 29 minus 24 is going to give me 5. So 5 is my final answer there. Alright, part B. Notice we have a grouping symbol here with this division bar, meaning I need to do everything up top before I divide it by 3. But then even up top, I have a grouping symbol here saying take everything inside and then square it. So I'm going to start inside that set of parentheses. So I'm just going to redraw those parentheses. I'm going to look here at these first ones. I'm going to do multiplication before I do the subtraction. So 3 times 4 is 12 minus 3 squared, all divided by 3. So then 12 minus 3 is going to give me 9 squared over 3. 9 squared means 9 times 9. That's going to be 81 over 3. And 81 divided by 3 is going to be 27. Alright, your homework is down here in the bottom, as you probably already seen. Your homework starts on page 20. Again, I'm going to do all of them with a 4 underneath it, and all of them with a 3 underneath it, and then you get to pick 6 more of your choice. So all of them with 4s, all of them with 3s, and 6 more of your choice. Hope you understood. If you need more help, I'll be helping you tomorrow in class. Feel free to watch this video as many times as you want. Good luck.